Hello everybody, morning. Do you want to take a seats please so we can make a start? Thank you. Morning everyone, I hope everybody's well. Good to see some familiar faces and some new ones. So welcome to our last seminar of 2025. Great theme today around skills, apprenticeships, getting people back into work. Really looking forward to this. I've got some great speakers and they're going to take us through some really good stuff today. So just want to spend about 10 or 15 minutes just giving you a bit of an update where we are from a direct works perspective and from a direct works group as well. Let's just hope this works. There you go. So just to let you know, the seminar is being recorded. So don't worry if you miss anything, you haven't got any notes down. You'll be able to look at those recordings later on. Can you try and keep questions to the end? There's some books on there, so you want to write them down, just so we can allow speakers then just get a bit of a flow rather than stop, start. I know we did this with John on a round table in the northeast, and I think we made about an hour's presentation, lasted about 5 hours. So so if we can avoid that, that'd be really useful. It keeps me on time as well. And the other thing as well is, as you know, all these events are CPD accredited. So any of you that are in the institutes or you're having to collect those CPD points. And having only recently been audited by the Chartered Institute Builder, it was pretty useful actually that I'd been attended and getting the CPD stuff, because I think they would have challenged the fact that I probably wasn't doing it, but I was in fact. Anyway, give you an update on Direct Works and Direct Works group update as well. Sorry I'm looking up, but that's where the screen is. Okay, so today's agenda, as you can see, we've got session 1 with Danny Clark. Really pleased that he could join us from the CITB. Session 2, we've got Etam talking about RAF. I know you've read this already. We've got Jen, who's spoken quite a few times, so thanks for that, Jen. She's a regular here. She's going to talk to us about PFP Thrive. And then after lunch, we've got Mark and Simon Goodwin. Mark and Simon, I think it's you guys at the back. Good morning. They're going to talk us through winning hearts and sort of changing perceptions of career and trades. And you're doing some great stuff in Doncaster, I have to say. Mark has spoken about it before, and I think it needs to come to a forum like this to really hear the great work you guys are doing. Because it'd be great to get that as a national model, if I'm being honest with you. I really like the stuff you're doing, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. And then session 5, which I think is equally as important as everything else we've got on this morning, is around females into construction. We know how hard it is. We know it's a male-dominated. And we know we all said about our steering group, we're male, stale, and over 50. And that, that's what it is. And it feels like the industry can be like that sometimes in the sector. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think breaking some of those sort of stereotypes as well. So, membership and attendance, current position. You may see those who have attended Direct Works quite regularly over the years, and I think Mike and I have been coming since about 1998, when Keith first set off. So we've been going quite a long time. The room used to be absolutely full. I used to do 4 events a year, but I think you'll all probably admit that COVID's had a massive effect in terms of how people now, I guess, use their time, whether that's coming to a seminar or actually sat in the office or sat at home, actually taking information in. We know now we've got the internet, we've got ChatGPT, we've got everything there. So those resources are there. So we're sort of in the middle of chasing some of that, really. So over the last 12 months, we've seen a gradual reduction in both subscription renewals and individual attendance at our in-person seminars. While overall satisfaction among attendees remains high, the data shows that a growing number of members are not fully utilising the membership benefit. And we do track the people that attend. And it's interesting, I think, probably here today is probably no more than 10 to 15 organisations represented. It's just that there's probably 2 or 3 of you, which when you think we've got about just over 60 members, obviously people are not getting the benefit of these events. So the trend's not unique to us. It reflects a wider shift in post-pandemic professional engagement patterns across many sectors. We've seen changing work patterns, hybrid working, remote working, and as I said earlier on, you can grab information at source. And I think thinking how people now learn, and they're having an opportunity to pick how they wish to learn. So professionals are taking those different routes in terms of picking up information and absorbing it. There's cost and time constraints. I was talking to someone this morning and said they're having a really good look with their business about who attends what. And we have seen some of that. We know that organisations are obviously becoming very much budget conscious, because we're being absolutely slaughtered with everything, aren't we, at the moment? It feels like a tsunami of one thing after another. And we get that. And we know that hotels are not as cheap as they used to be, obviously, and travel is becoming absolutely chronic, to be fair. And actually trying to get a train and get you in on time, I know, can be a pain. So we're facing all that. We've got competing priorities operationally and compliance pressures in the sector, which means professional development and networking are often deprioritised despite the long-term benefits. You know, sometimes people say, I just can't come, and I think this is where, I think particularly around succession, and I know, I'm looking at you, John, because you've been here a few years as well, and I think you've had a succession of people who've regularly attended this event, and I think Direct Works, I think people really get an advantage of that, because networking is really a useful tool in terms of developing your career. I think it's I think it's something that some of the younger people coming through don't realise. There's a hell of a lot of experience and knowledge in this room. You know, come in and sponge it up. Come and talk to people that have been doing what you've been doing maybe 5 or 10 years. They've been doing it 25 and 30. And they will love to tell you their experience. They'd love to tell you where they've failed. They'd love to tell you where they've made great successes. So yeah, I think that's something that we all need to be conscious of. I think the other thing that, and I've noticed this, and Mike and I have been speaking about it, event saturation. There seems to be events going on all over the place. Multiple conferences. We've now got 2 housing conferences, one in Manchester with Inside Housing, another one in Liverpool. You're thinking, wow, you know, when's the next one going to appear? So yeah, we're all fighting which events to go to, and again, it's all about time and resources. So, next step from us then, in terms of, I guess, where we want to go. Well, we know that what we should be looking at, and I said earlier on, is that people want things at source. So we're looking about introducing an on-demand hub. So we're going to record, obviously, all the seminars, and then we make that available. We've always done that, but I think it's the point that it needs to be quicker. As soon as this event finishes, we need to get that on in terms of digitised, and then allow people to pick up on that. And the other thing that we probably don't do, and we'll admit this, is that there are some real good sound bites in that information. And we all know, for those people that have been coming over the years, the speakers that we've had and some of the topics have covered have been absolutely phenomenal, and we've not capitalised that. And Mike and I have been really analysing in terms of what we do and in terms of you know, the evidence that comes out of these events and some of those bite size that we should be spinning around. And to be fair, Mike has done a hell of a lot of work. I've been sat in the background being the apprentice around technology and ChatGPT and everything else he's been trying to automate while he's been sat in Turkey at home. But yeah, he's done a terrific amount of work in terms of getting us to where we are. For those that don't know, we've decided to go it alone in terms of marketing. We've had a couple of marketing companies over the last couple of years, absorbed some of the cost from the membership fee, and it's not really panned out for us. So Mike and I decided to use automation and to do it ourselves, and I think you'll see some of the value of that coming out in the coming months. People want shorter online sessions. They want to see a feedback loop and clearer value messaging. You know, emphasise flexibility, accessibility, and convenience. So I think you can see where I'm heading there. Improves member reaction. You know, we feel that you want to get that information all the time. And people do come to me and say, oh, I can have the presentations, can have this, can have that. And it's right, the website isn't great, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think you get the picture around, you know, greater content reach, stronger value perception, and future-proof engagement model. We need to keep people constantly engaged. I don't know any of you that got board meetings, you know, once every quarter, and you're there thinking, oh, I'm telling the board member again the same thing. And that's because you've got that gap, and that's how we feel sometimes, is that, you know, 3, 4, 5 months in between, you tend to lose that, you know, that contact and that connectivity, which is critical to us all. So, just picking up our websites, for those that have been on the Direct Works website, yeah, it's a bit naff really, we've got to admit. It's not really done what we wanted to do, and I think that's because everyone's moved away from being on a website. So what we're going to do, and we're working on that now, is we're going to basically migrate to the Direct Works Group website, because everything sits below. Direct Works is part of Direct Works Group. There will be a legacy area on that website that will allow you to go back to look at that Direct Works. And what you'll see there is Tony, where are you? Nice picture of Tony on there as one of our affiliates. And we are now then going to promote the affiliate page on the Direct Works Group website. So we're trying to get all that into one place, but you'll still be able to reach out. We will eventually remove that legacy piece, and I'll talk to you about where we think we're going to go next. So what we believe, and Mike and I think we tried it many years ago, Mike, didn't we, about 2011? And I don't know, Mike stumbled across this bit of, I don't know what it was, and we thought, oh, we'll create a community. And I think within about a week, we've got about 350 people on that community, just by going out and asking people, do you want to join? And that's where we feel that we can take a real advantage by working with this bit of software called Circle, creating a community where it's switched on all the time, where you can get at those resources without having to ask for them, without having to go on a clumsy website, and then to think about, how we can interact on that. And we know that people are on LinkedIn, but Mike and I have been looking at that, and we don't think people are necessarily engaging on that. And we get that because, a lot of you in the room are, you're working for employees. You don't really want to necessarily put your job on the line by maybe saying sometimes what's really happening out there. And I get that, and we all understand that, we respect that. So I'm not saying that people are going to go off-piece and, be calling things out all the time, but I think we can have an honest conversation. We do that in this room, don't we? Away from work, we have an honest conversation. Well, if we can continue that conversation, whether it's 1 to 300 people, we're going to go with Circle, and we're going to call it Collaboro. And so we'll be launching that hopefully sometime after Christmas. Mike and I are meeting up before Christmas and then working with Circle then to see what that looks like. But I'm really excited about that because I think that will give us the connectivity we've always wanted. We did actually look at an app development, so we did pay some. We were going to go into produce an app. And if you remember, Joe, we got a lot. But anyway, we got somebody that said, look, rather than go into doing that, why don't you just let us do a bit of pre-work on that? And we did. It cost us about $5,000. I mean, it came up with a fantastic concept. It was absolutely brilliant, but it was unaffordable. But at least we didn't go down the line of trying to spend $100,000 on a bloody app that was never going to work. So we've been sensible around that. But I think it's becoming loud and clear. And I said, as I said earlier on, actually engaging and connecting with people is not just about in person. It is about kind of getting to something, get on. We know with LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is that everyone's using these days, they switch it on, it's there. You're not asking for it, it's there, and that's the way that we need to be. And I think that's what we need to do going forward. And that's me, finished. So I'm now going to welcome Danny Clark, thank you, Danny, for stepping in for Deborah from the CITB, and we'll make a start on the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell, and thanks for having me in the room. And it's nice to get an applause. I'm guessing it was for me standing on the stage rather than what Russell was just talking about. Anyone that was expecting Debs, I do apologise. She isn't here. I'm her replacement, but there is a Debs over in the corner. So if anyone specifically wants to speak to somebody called Debs, the lady over there is probably the best person to engage with. So it was interesting what Russell was just saying there about events. And just before I get onto the data, and what the data is telling us in regards to the industry in which we work. I think the other thing that I always find, because I'm quite privileged to run all of the CITB events, so all of our skills and training conferences and stuff like that, and one of the things that I find is that most engagement comes from the people in the room having open, honest conversations with each other, and I think quite often that's a really good starting point. And sometimes people go to these events not networking, thinking it's about trying to sell to everybody in the room, and it isn't about that, and you know that because you're here. It's generally about trying to have an honest conversation, get to know somebody, so that then next time you meet them, you've got a bit of a connection and talk about things outside of the normal, my name's so-and-so and I'm an engagement director. No one really cares what my job title is. No one really cares what I look like, what I sound like. What you're most interested in is that I drink a black coffee. I quite like crisps, generally, and that you've probably seen one of my posts on LinkedIn at some point in the future, and you've got an opinion on it, whether that's positive or negative. Generally, it will probably be quite negative. The other thing that I will always say about events like this is you generally get out what you put in. But you're not here for me to talk about events, you're here for me to talk about what the real skills crisis is, which is really quite a meaty topic. So I do have some slides, so I will look down at my notes, just only because I want to make sure I'm getting the statistics that our team have given me correct. Because if I don't, I will get told off by our insights and forecasting team. But I think for me, what the real skills crisis is telling us and what the data is really telling us is what we're doing isn't working. It hasn't been working for years, yet we continue to do the same thing and hope that at some point this magic switch is going to change, and all of a sudden all the problems we have around recruitment and everything else is suddenly going to be fixed. And I think I'd be naive to say that that's going to happen anytime soon without some systemic change and fundamentally rethinking how we do things. So if you expect anything else, then you might possibly be slightly disappointed. So why does this matter? Quite often, as a representative of the Construction Industry Training Board, I generally get met with people going, what are you doing about it? This is your responsibility and you need to fix it. Get more new people into the industry. Get the young people in. and let's see what they can do. Well, it isn't about a shortage of young people, believe it or not. The data shows that it's slightly more complex than that. And what we do know is that demand's outpacing supply. We do know that we are experiencing some substantial losses from the workforce. But ultimately, as well as new entrants, we've got to look to the barriers to retention. And why aren't we keeping the people that are here, ultimately? So it's not just about new entrants. I think my starting point is going to be, it's about who comes, who stays, but who leaves and why they're leaving. And I think that's what's really going to start to turn the dial. So you'll see from some of these stats, I'm not somebody who generally talks through the words on the slides. You'd be pleased to know. I think these will be shared afterwards, and by all means, if you've got any questions afterwards, I do encourage you to reach out and speak to me at any point. But the key data points for me, and there is a context to this, and this is something else that I think people don't necessarily notice or that they've not necessarily picked up on. So the key data for me, and I will just be looking down while I read this, but we've got to recognise that in society we have a very low birth rate. And I don't think necessarily people recognise that the numbers of young people is reducing. And what that means is that there will be fewer people entering education, therefore fewer people leaving education and entering the world of employment. The ratio of retirees will increase significantly. So currently, there are 280 retirees per 1,000 people in the industry. By 2050, that will increase to 308 per 1,000. I feel like the martyr of doom. I'm just here to give you all the bad news. I don't mean to. But that means that as fewer join, the proportion of older people in the industry is going to increase. And I'm trying not to deliberately look at anybody at that point when I talk about that. And what we know is that at the moment, around a quarter of the workforce is 55 plus. If you want to go to 50s, well, 35% are over 50, yet only 20% are under 30. And I think that's quite stark in contrast when you start thinking about succession planning, competence, which is really important. The average age in the industry currently is 42.5. Yes, you might be thinking that's probably my sweet spot where I am at the minute, so I'm average, which is quite ironic. But by 2050, this is going to increase to 45.5. So it's only going up. We must think about new entrants, but we must also think about the workforce that we have more broadly than that. And against the backdrop of output growth, we need to bring in another 48,000 people, because they're just hanging off trees, waiting around on corners, waiting for somebody to come up and offer them a role that we're not currently offering them. So currently, in 2024, the construction output reached 187.6 billion, and that is projected to increase up towards 2029 by 2.2%. That's quite a big increase on those types of figures. The workforce by 2029 is predicted to be just shy of 2.5 million, which is quite a substantial number of people in this country, or in Great Britain. The impact on projects, though, is going to be pronounced if we can't fix these problems of getting people in and getting them to stay. As a percentage of the workforce, this slide is quite an interesting one because, again, as CITB, often we're met with, but it's the trades. We need to get more people in the trades. What's happening to joiners? What's happening to brickies? What's happening to roofers and scaffolders and everybody else? The percentage of trades, we tend to neglect the fact that there will be managers and supervisors amongst that. There will be professional and technical. There will be office-based. But totally, we need them across all trades. And this is one of the things that I often talk about if I'm ever invited to talk to people about skills and retention and recruitment and stuff like that. There's 186 roles in construction, but yet we still focus so much on the trades, and the trades are important. I'm not going to stand here and say they aren't. But what I'm trying to emphasise at this point is 186 roles in construction demonstrates there is a job for pretty much anybody, regardless of what age they are, what they look like, their background, their academic achievement. There will be a role and a function for that person. We just need to make them see that it's more than just one stereotypical image that sometimes people have within the education system. There is a role for everybody. We just need to think about how we make sure that people are aware of these roles and what their opportunities exist. But we do need to look at education to employment, because that's something that we are focusing on at the moment. How do we get people from education and training into work, ultimately, and how do we make sure that they're ready for work? It's another conversation that generally people will go, what are you doing about it? Because, we solve every problem. So these statistics I'm about to say, because, again, I've pulled them and I've wrote them down, so I want to read them out. I have to say that it's difficult to track people from education into employment with any real confidence. So these are what we believe to be the best estimates. So as it stands, 1 in 3 construction trainees will enter our industry quickly after completing the course. So 20% of those will go into employment and 13% will go on to an apprenticeship. So for every cohort, 33% will end up employed in our sector. 29% will go on to other construction training that won't necessarily be in employment. 18%, so just about a fifth, are going to go into another industry. That's a big number when you think about the numbers that are going through training. So they're training, they're going through their programs, and then 1/5 of those in every classroom will leave the industry. 3% will go on to non-construction training, 2% will do something else, we don't know what that is, but 14% will go into unemployment. So again, in figures like that, you've got 35%, so just over a third, that will either not be employed or won't work in our sector, having gone through the training to begin with. So something's not quite working, I think it's fair to say. And it doesn't take the data or me standing here to tell you that, because I think we know from just talking about the shortages. So the dropout rates from apprenticeships, I feel like the harbour of doom, I really do. Depends on what figures you look at for apprenticeships. Depends on what the dropout rate is. So out of that 13% of everyone on a course that goes into an apprenticeship, 40% to 47% will drop out of that apprenticeship. Depends on what research report you read. I might be over-egging it slightly, but about half of them probably won't complete. So what's happening in that space? So is it the fact that we're not possibly preparing them for the world of work? Is it that we could offer more support programs? Is it that we could consider what's needed? Could we recruit people into apprenticeships slightly better rather than just volume in, volume out and more meat into the sausage machine? Possibly. But that's my problem to fix, obviously. Sorry. You can laugh at some point if it's funny. If it's not, then don't. It's fine. But I think what we do need to look at, really bad jokes aside, is we do really need to look at what that education to employment pathway looks like. Because one of the barriers that people have is when people leave education, they believe they're not quite ready for the world of work, which is why we cannibalise each other and poach people from all of our competitors, hoping that that will be the elixir that gives us what we need, rather than focusing on developing the skills of tomorrow. That just drives salaries up, that drives all the problems up, because there are only so many people here before we do consider investing in future generations. By future generations, I mean new entrants of a young disposition. But I'm also thinking about career changers, people that are getting to a certain point in life where they potentially want to go somewhere else and do something different, that have got a really good work ethic, got a really good skill set, but yet we don't create that opportunity because we have such a focus on young people that we ignore those that aren't necessarily within our definition of a new entrant. If we think about the opportunities across the broad sectors and other industries, if we can start to poach from other industries, that will start to solve some of our challenges as well. Representation across roles. I noticed on the agenda that we've talked about women in construction, and it is a massive, massive topic for myself, having launched the Top 100 Women in Construction programme a few years ago to highlight the amazing work that women do in industry. Currently, you'll not be surprised to hear the figures are around 15% of people in the industry are women, and that doesn't sound enough, and it isn't enough. But more recently, I've preferred to change that narrative slightly, because what that equates to is somewhere in the region of 340,000 people. That, in contrast, sounds quite impressive. And it's about linguistics and the language that we use, because if you are portraying a position in our industry as you are one of a few, that sounds slightly challenging for some people. But if you say, but there are still 340,000 others, that makes it sound like they're more likely to see these unicorns on site. They're not rare. There are so many wonderful people doing wonderful things around women in construction. We just need to know where to look for them. The real challenge in women in construction is that out of that 15%, just 10% are from an ethnic minority background. Now, when you think that 50% of our population is women, that shows you the pool of people that we can go after in terms of attracting them into the industry. If you then recognise that we have just shy of 20% ethnic minority population, but yet 10% of 15% are working in the industry, that shows you the scale of people that we can potentially attract into our industry. We have a big talent pool that we aren't working with. And if we continue to do what we've always done, we won't get the change that we need. So we all know that there's 15%. We all know that if you talk about trades on site, and I did mention not just specifically talking about trades, but trades is 1%. And it's a real challenge to overcome some of those problems. Ethnic minorities also make up 20% of voluntary leavers in the industry, which means something's not quite working for 1 in 5 of the workforce. So if we just focus on chucking more meat into the machine, we're ignoring the fact that we're wasting so many opportunities for others at the other end. They're interested in the industry, they're interested in working because they've worked on site or they've worked within the sector. But yet 1 in 5 of them feel that they need to leave for a reason. That's a lot of numbers. If you think about just the proportion of your workforce is currently, if you think that 1 in 5 will just get up and walk, surely you'd like to think about what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, I'm not living in a utopian world where suddenly I'm going to stand here and say everything's perfect and we can keep everybody all of the time. We can't. But it's something to think about and really drill into. Why do so many people leave voluntarily? The positive news, because I like to try and give some positivity, believe it or not, is that women into apprenticeships has increased in the last decade. It's gone from 10%, or just shy of 10%, up to 15%, which is quite a big shift. But in all the talk around gender representation, ethnic minority representation, we also think about neurodiversity and attraction or retention. So again, in a past life, I was quite fortunate to undertake some research around neurodiversity in construction, which showed that 1 in 4 people in the industry identify, either formally or self-diagnosis, as neurodiverse. The general population, for those of you that are interested, about 1 in 7. Now, this rhetoric that exists within our industry, that it's for certain people that may be challenged or found school challenging, it does not equate to academic abilities. It just equates to assessment techniques generally. And actually, the industry is very much open and welcoming to anyone that is neurodiverse, because research has shown that overwhelmingly most organisations will support individuals that do that. Yet the way that we recruit people into the sector is quite traditional. It's either an informal approach or we use applicant tracking systems that people that potentially neurodiverse find slightly challenging. But yet we expect them still to jump through all these hoops the same as everybody else without any real benefits of process. Strengths and barriers. Well, there is a lot of strengths and barriers, and there is a hypothesis currently underway, which is that the scale of neurodiversity within our industry is probably predicated by the number of self-employed people that we have in the industry, where people need to work for themselves. If you are interested in that figure, it's about 36% are self-employed in the sector at the minute, so 1 in 3. Which is quite interesting, I thought. Clearly not. But what we need to think about with these attraction and retention pieces, I'm not always passive-aggressive, I promise, is that workforce resilience. And when we try to focus on one demographic, one profile, it is often at the expense of others, or it often creates these barriers to others. And what I mean by this is, more recently, we've been having conversations, or I've certainly been having conversations in steering groups and working groups around international days and things like that, where suddenly somebody's rolled out, taken a picture of and stuck on a poster on the wall for a International X Day. And then this can create barriers for the existing workforce to say, but why are they different? What about me? I do a great job as well, and why am I not getting the attention? Because, you know, I quite like my picture being taken, believe it or not, so why can't I be on the wall? And I think we have to be conscious of some of these barriers that we operate. If it's just for a poster on the wall, why are we doing it? If it's not to celebrate everybody in the workplace anyway, why does that not happen? It's also within certain educational conversations that we've had recently, or that I've certainly had recently, it's where we suddenly mark out people differently. So when you do tours of college and things like that, you get met with this, we have 3 women doing this programme, then they're all great. You go, why wouldn't they be great? In terms of the language that we use, why is it a surprise that people that are slightly different from the normal cohort are any better or any worse than anybody else? But what else do we say about the others on the programme? So if 80% of them are all brilliant, why aren't we saying 80% of our students are fantastic? But yet we try to identify those that are slightly different for some unbeknown reason. And I'm not quite sure why, but it's something that we're working with certain principals to kind of understand. Because it creates this barrier where there is a wedge to say, well, you're getting special treatment just because you don't look like the rest of the cohort. Not sure that's necessarily the right approach. By all means, celebrate. By all means, do that. But let's try and celebrate everybody. I think it's fair to say. So I mentioned that it's about being beyond new entrants. 48,000 people we need every year, extra roughly there or thereabouts. 36% are self-employed. Employer pathways, inclusive recruitment strategies. Inclusive recruitment strategies is about, don't just have a job description that you've had for 30 years and go, this is what people need. People generally say to me, oh, you've heard that statistic that men will look at a job title and go, I can do that job. I can be a brain surgeon. I've no experience, but I can do it because I like the job title. And then there's others that the same person will then go, but women will need to read all that job description and make sure they can do every single part of it before they apply. That's false advertising. That's false. Fake news, man, fake news. It's not true. It's one person that said it once upon a time, and everyone's taken it to be gospel. It's not reality. There's been loads of research into it that's debunked that myth. I think the statistics about 52% of men and 56% of women will do that. But we believe what we're told. And somebody stood on a panel that says 90% of women won't apply if it doesn't relate to them. Makes people sit up and take notice. The point to take from it is review your job descriptions. Think about the words and the language that you use within it and make sure that people understand what you're asking them to do. And only put things in that are relevant to the job. Seems kind of common sense. We don't need 35 pages of this is what it means to be a bricklayer. You'll be surprised, and we use really fancy words, especially with the advent of AI and ChatGPT and things like that. Go, make me the best job description in the world that just chucks loads of words at a page and expects people to understand what it means. Also think about processes. Interviews are quite daunting for certain people. Think about how we can use work trials and things like that, if that works, instead of interviews where you go, tell me the best thing you've ever done. Tell me your biggest strengths and weakness, and everyone knows that my weakness is I'm going to spin it because it's actually a strength, but I want you to think it's a weakness. Oh, I'm really dedicated to focusing on punctuality. No one really that's not really a weakness, is it? It's about attitude more than anything. But think about how we recruit, and if you're getting people through the door. So one of the things I'd say is I hear quite often where people say, we've got so many people apply for these roles, they just can't get through. Maybe review what it is that they're trying to get through in the first place. That might help, and where we're advertising. Nowadays, with the advent of social media, people that are looking for the roles, especially people that are social media savvy, will be scrolling and scrolling through your web pages. We'll be checking your social media posts. We'll be looking at the token gestures of people and what the employees are posting about the places that they work. That will give them a good insight into whether they want to work with you or not. If you're doing it as a token gesture of a person on the poster on the wall because it's International Something Day, most people nowadays will probably see quite through that, to be fair. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you do that if that's the only marketing process you've got. But beyond new entrants, 40% of employers are isolationists. What's isolationists? Well, it means they're disengaged from training and support services. 40% of organisations aren't engaged with training or support services. That's a big number. So if you think about competence, you think about these 48,000 people extra that we need every year, and I don't know who I'm talking to there. I should do it like that, shouldn't I? 48,000 people, 40% of them aren't engaged in training. How do we ensure competence within our industry if people aren't engaged in making sure that their workforces are competent? So we could get them through the door. And the easiest thing in the world tomorrow will be to go out and drag people in off the streets and go, we've got 50,000 new entrants. But would you want them working on your home? Probably not. You can answer that, by the way. That was a genuine question. Probably not. So why aren't we focusing on what training is available? Why aren't we focusing on the competence and making sure that if we're going to go to the trouble of training people and putting them through colleges and supporting them and things like that, if we're going to go through all those steps, why aren't we making more of an effort to make sure they stick around? And it isn't, believe it or not, it's not always salary. Most people will stick around because of how they feel about the workplace, the people that they work with. I always use this mantra that the first time you notice a pay rise is when your boss tells you you've got a pay rise, you think, oh, that's nice, and the first pay packet. After that, it's just normal. That's just what you earn. But the way that people make you feel, the people that you work with, and I don't just mean your boss, because sometimes it's your peers, that is vitally important to keeping people in a role. So insights from us, because it wouldn't be us without, or it wouldn't be me without giving some insights from us, and that's what people want to know. What are you doing about it, as I said at the beginning? Quite a lot, but there's only so much we can do but we need the support of industry. So you'll see from the papers and the press and news articles and our website, if you ever happen to find your way through those web pages, there's quite a lot going on, especially in England. So I look after England. So in England alone, we have the Construction Skills Mission Board, which is talking around hubs and home building hubs and how we support 1.5 million new homes. That's just new homes. That's not even talking about infrastructure. That's not even talking about the 40-odd% that makes up retrofit and RMI. Where are these people coming from? We are talking about placement models. So they're currently there's the announcements around the placements. What does that look like? How does it work for employers? So we can represent and say where we think it could work from a design perspective, but it needs to be employers, because it needs to be designed in a way that employers will say, that works for us actually. It needs to be this amount of time, and it'd be really good if when they leave this educational programme, they are work ready. That we don't then need to spend another few weeks or months getting them to a place where they are work ready. There's an integration with our Go Construct website. If anyone's come across Go Construct in the past, there's an integration there, so that there is a matching service that sits behind it. So we support employers with apprenticeships. We support them to understand how to keep apprenticeships and make sure that they are claiming what they're entitled to claim and they've got all their accounts set up and things like that. We can even help with interviews, and we'll do them for you, but we'll guide you through what that looks like and what we can do from an inclusive perspective on that. Anyone that's unsuccessful, we're able to then work with to make sure that we can place them somewhere else if needs be, if that opportunity exists. If they're registered, if you're registered on Go Construct. There are these regional skills hubs that exists, both from an NHBC perspective that we're working with, but from our own work with local authorities and the mayoral combined authorities. We are overseeing competence frameworks. So when we talk about competence frameworks for pretty much every trade in the sector, there is the super sector work that's happening amongst the Construction Leadership Council. We are supporting to make sure that when we say that someone's competent, industry, and when I say we, I mean I'm speaking on behalf of the industry, of course, we're saying that we know what someone's competent to do. There is a consistent standard applied. And all of these competence frameworks, and I'm mentioning this and emphasising this because people don't realise, you can feed into to say, for our business, this is what makes somebody competent to do this. So you can help shape what that competence standard is. It's not us sat in a room going, we think it's this. It's going, you do this job, what is competence to you? How can you feed into that to make sure that when we go out, it reflects what's needed from the majority? There will always be somebody that goes, no, we also need them to do this. We can't do everything. We have to go with the majority. And then we also support skills boot camps and all these other localised incentives and programmes as well. We have tried to make access to funding simpler. So one of the biggest challenges that we had, and this is my pitch for CITB, was that our funding and our skills systems were quite challenging to navigate, especially for micros and SMEs, going back to the neurodivergent piece and how many are in the industry. It's really confusing, therefore we never did it. That's where the employee networks came from, was just to say, we'll help you with the training and we'll help you to sign a form to make sure that you turn up for it. Our new entrance team was created to support organisations to make sure that they know what they're doing with new entrants. There are alternative, no there's not, there's additional routes to competence that we're working for at the minute. I have to say that, I have to use my words carefully because you'll be surprised how many people think when I say alternative, we mean we're not doing apprenticeships. We are doing apprenticeships, of course we are. Additional routes to competence though, is for those people that don't want to do an apprenticeship or an apprenticeship is not suitable, but they can still then have a degree of competence. So that's another piece of work that's going on. And unfortunately, what generally people associate with CITB is the funding. Do I get some money? Great. But there's all these other layers to make sure that we understand what we're funding, we understand what the standards are, what the qualifications are, that we're finding these alternate additional pathways to competence. And we are working with organisations to do that. And it's evidence-based. It has to be evidence-based. We have a huge report out every year that my wonderful colleagues in the Insights and Analysis and Forecasting team create to share what's happening in the industry. But unfortunately, we are predicated on data to find data that supports the arguments that we want to make and the evidence that supports our views. What sometimes is quite useful is to step back and go, show me something that doesn't support that view. Now, with all the advent of co-pilots and things like that, what I tend to do is if I get these types of slides and I get asked to do sessions like this, I'll generally chuck it in and go, give me a conflicting view on this statistic. Challenge my thinking on this, and you'll be surprised what comes out. Some of it's not accurate, some of it's out of date, but you'll generally get a view back to challenge what you're thinking. If we only look for the evidence that supports our argument, we are not going to become anywhere, or we're not going to get anywhere near the systemic change that we need to make sure that we are attracting people into the industry, we are keeping them, and that we are reducing the number of people that want to leave voluntarily. And I emphasise voluntarily because people be going, but that means you can move people on. Let's be fair, there's performance challenges everywhere. This is people that choose to leave, that you might not necessarily want them to. If you haven't seen it, by the way, it looks like that for England. 26 pages, it's really useful. And if you want it, I'll send you the links afterwards. So upcoming initiatives, I've already mentioned the CSMB plan, which is the Placement Models Go Construct and the Regional Skills Hub. We are working on the skills boot camps. I keep getting asked about this £600 million government investment target in 60,000 new workers, focusing on infrastructure and housing. It is a big programme. It's not all us. We are working with our regional stakeholders. We're working with the mayoral strategic authorities. You might hear them called mayoral combined authorities. It's the same thing. But what we're trying to make sure is that from our perspective, we are working with the various stakeholders to make sure that as well as people cannibalising from each other and their competitors, we're not cannibalising the students, we're not cannibalising the tutors. And what I mean by that is we do not want to be putting regional skills hubs for home building in the same places necessarily as we are for infrastructure, as we are for other skills hubs as well. Because ultimately, generally speaking, groundworks for infrastructure is groundworks for home building. So why would you want to do it in the same space? So we're trying to join the dots. So we are working with the likes of an HBC, we are working with the likes of the HBF and some of these other trade federations to make sure that it's the best outcome for industry in those regions. So all the conversations that we have with those MSAs are saying, in this patch, with the demand that we reckon we've got, and we are sense checking our demand with our engagements team to say, this is what the data's telling us, what is happening on the ground, are they aligned? Great. What's the best outcome then in North Manchester? What's the best outcome then in the southwest, in these new towns? So we can make sure that we are not robbing Peter to pay Paul, for want of a better word. Because the easiest thing would be is to have one organisation's branding on something to say, but we must have 25 hubs, let's make sure we've got them there, because it doesn't matter, because we've done the hub and we said what we were going to do. There's no outcomes to that, there's no additionality, there's no impact. What we want to make sure, and what most contractors and people that work in the sector want to make sure, is that we're working together to deliver the best outcomes for industry, which means you'll have a richer talent pool to employ and then do your projects. And that is something that is happening from a collaborative industry partnership. So I know that personally, because I sit on quite a lot of those boards. And it is about, if I'm honest, putting your ego to one side. Sometimes I couldn't care less what logo's on it. It's about what's going to get the most people in that room learning and then working on site in the industry. So the 5-point action plan, for me, it's about focusing on retention as much as attraction. We have so many people applying for roles in the industry. It isn't an attraction problem. It's a retention problem. It's also about thinking broader than certain demographics that are outside of people's controls. It's about recognising potentially we have a neurodivergent workforce. It's about thinking about inclusion across all spectrums. It's about making sure that training is aligned to jobs. Because again, we can get them into college, we can get them through college, we can make sure they're site ready, but if people aren't employing, that's a challenge. Flexible career opportunities. We're finding more and more contractors looking at the flexible career opportunities, so job shares and things like that. That might be an option. And then we're looking at employer-led recruitment to make sure that there are those sustainable employment opportunities. But we can't do that. As much as I'd love to phone most of the contractors up in the room and say, my target is to get this number more apprentices, you must take on an apprentice, I can probably gather what response I'd get to that, and I wouldn't like to repeat it in polite company. There does need to be a degree of confidence in the pipeline to do that, which is something else that's common with the CSMB. Confidence to know that if you're going to recruit, there is the pipeline of works that will give you the confidence to not just recruit but retain as well. So that's in place, or that's underway. And that's my open floor. I don't know whether you want me to do it now or...
No, you go ahead, it's fine.
That's it. Ta-da! I told you it was my clap. It was definitely my clap.
No, thank you, Dan. That was excellent, and there's some real golden nuggets in there for sure. Yeah, I think while we do make light of it, I think it is a serious subject. You're right. There's some real challenges, and I think you described them perfectly there. There's no silver bullet here. It's a combination of things. I'll open the floor. Any questions that people would like to ask Danny? Come on. Yeah, Jen?
So I work for a PhD training provider, which is part of a social housing provider. A lot of the housing partners we work with are members of CITV, and they're not very aware of what CITV is and the benefits of CITV. Is there a way that we can sort of open CITV up to more housing providers? Because I think it's very, at the moment, it's very based around how big someone's DLO is, whether they utilise CITV. But I think there's so much more to it, and from all the things you've just been talking about,
it's a fair question, and I think we have two things. One is we have to be really careful of the scope order. And that's something that not a lot of people will fully understand. I don't fully understand it, if I'm honest. We've got a team that supports that. So if they are in scope, then they'll likely be registered and can draw down support and things like that. But if they're undertaking activities outside of scope, there's not much we can do. So out of scope things principally for me would be things like plumbing, things like electrical. They're out of scope for us, so we can't necessarily provide support for organisations that do that. So I think it would be a case-by-case basis as to what we could do to support that person. But I think the broader piece around what CITB do, we're working on from a comms perspective. So we're trying to work with those trusted partners, because there is a lot of misunderstanding, I think is probably the politest way to put it, where people see that we are effectively the HMRC or the tax persons coming just to do bad things to them. I don't know where that comes from, but I guess it's just part of the course that people hear something and they don't take the time to find out from us. There's a lot of support that we do for organisations. All we can do is work with these trusted partners to say, just have a conversation with us. And if you're in scope, we'll talk about that, not what we can do for you. And if you're not in scope, we'll try and signpost what else we can do, because I think that's the other thing that people don't necessarily appreciate is, in all the conversations that we have from a regional perspective, what we're doing is going, this funding is here through us. However, there's this funding that isn't through us that's available, and we can help support you with that. And that's where like skills boot camps and stuff like that come from. But people just think, well, if I speak to you, then you're suddenly going to land me with millions of pounds worth of bills. We're not, because that's not really what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do, make sure is that the organisations and their workforce are competent to work on site in scope. I have to say in scope. But that's the big thing for me, is we don't just look at our funding. Our teams are looking at what else is out there that we can support somebody with to make sure you get the skills that you need.
Anybody else? Yeah, John?
Hello, I'm John from HMS. Hi, Danny, all right. Just wondering, is there any differences that you see in relation to the stats that you produced in the north of England versus the south of England, or the relative?
I went broader England, but they do, so this report, and I will highlight it again, does break it down by region. So yeah, absolutely, there will be differences. I think there's more apprenticeships in the north than there is in the south. For instance, I couldn't give you the specific numbers, but I do know that when I look at it, I go, that's interesting. Why is that so different? I don't know. But it is something I'm aware of, but I couldn't quote the stats on it. But yeah, it does break down. And our new data models that we're doing for the CSMB and for these hubs break it down to mayoral combined authority level to say what are the skills in this patch. And that's where that data is feeding into our employee network steering groups. I don't know if anyone's on the steering groups or aware of the steering groups. So again, locally, they'll be able to go, this is what we need in Manchester. It might be completely different from what you need elsewhere, but that data is fed into that. So they do break down at that granular level.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Can you just hang on one sec?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for that. Hi, Derek Ferguson here. In Scotland, we are struggling just now with places at college for apprentices. We recently had a young lady joined us as a painter and was travelling nearly an hour and a half to find a college. And eventually she left, purely because she just couldn't cope with the travel. She was young when she joined us, and the travel on top of everything else was just too much for her. We tried taking her to college in a van every day, etc., but it just didn't work. And we're finding out more and more that we've got apprentices, we go to the college, and there ain't the space. Is there anything the CITB or we can do to support that?
I think our answer isn't going to help, to be fair, because what I was going to say is we do travel to train and things like that, but I think paying for someone to travel an hour and a half to go to college isn't necessarily the answer. I don't have an answer, to be brutally honest. Outside of, I know that when I speak to my colleagues in Scotland, I think some of it is the locality and because of the breadth of the geography up there is quite challenging for colleges as well. I'm not sure where you are. I'm guessing you're probably close to one of the cities. But it's about provision as well and demand for that provision, because on one hand, when we speak to the colleges, they'll say, but if there's demand and there's places that will be filled, we'll run the course, but it won't be for like 3s and 4s and 5s. And I think that's ultimately the challenge there, is how do we bridge that gap? We do have specialist supply programmes within certain areas where there are needs, but again, I don't have an answer for that, if I'm honest. I'd love to sit here and go, absolutely, we can get them to do it, but there does need to be that numbers.
Great question. And anybody else like to ask anything? Yeah.
Hello, Michelle from Wolverhampton Homes. Just a quick question. I thought the information and stats that you've mentioned with regards to recruitment and retention was really interesting. Have you got any further detail with regards to why, or any narrative behind the reason that you haven't got the attraction into the industry, or any stats relating to why people are leaving? Because if there's an issue with our recruitment or our recruitment process, I think we'd find that quite interesting, because partly what I've identified is that we do recruit. I think we've challenged ourselves about the best way to recruit. Is it the right way? Is it a bit too if it's a trade, white collar, are we sort of putting people off before they even get through the door? So it'd be interesting if you've got any information that you could share around that.
There will be some narrative in this paper. But I think this is the challenge with data, is it's very much contingent on what people tell us and what goes into these reports. And whether it represents, I'm trying to think of a polite professional way to put it, whether it represents the reality of why people are leaving is probably challenging. A lot of it will be assumptions. Sustainability, the Supply Chain Sustainability School has really good statistics because they do anonymous surveys about why people are leaving and things like that. So there will be indication within these reports, but it won't be the total reality. I think that was wrong of me to suggest that it would be categorically this. All I would say, from having worked within contractors myself, would be to look at the stats, look at your own stats, and look at what's in your control and what's in your causation, exit interviews and things like that. Why are people leaving? And that would then indicate why are people leaving. If it's an attraction piece, look at them. If I don't know whether you break down demographics within your new entrants, but look at demographics of an application to then look at, if we get 5 times applicants than we get employees, what is the barrier between that and that? Is it the way you interview? Is it the job description? Is it attracted to one candidates potentially, and what you can do in that space? We're very quick to kind of go, we need to get more in, let's just put more into it. But the example I'll give you is, I remember we had 5.9% of applicants were for trade apprenticeships were women. We're like, that's 5 times the average, but they just weren't going through the interview stage. So they've been interviewed, but not getting through. And so we then revisited the interview questions, who was interviewing, and we changed the format of the interviews for everybody to make it more open and welcoming, I guess. So it wasn't this, sit there and you've got 3 people in suits shouting questions at you, and try and overcome that. Not reducing standards, but just making it so that people have a chance to shine. And I think, yeah, data is important, but sometimes we've got the data, and that helped us, because then I think we ended up with that 2% on site, which isn't ideal, but it's more than the average. So from us, we're like, that's brilliant, because we just looked at different questions and different structures around that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
Mine's a really simple one. It's Michaela at Citizen Housing. Are we allowed to get copies of this slide deck?
Absolutely.
Share this with our stakeholders, with our recruitment team.
Yeah, by all
Our
means.
recruitment teams are called for it, you know, they're not just for trade, so I think giving them some of this more detailed information would really help.
Yeah, no issues with that. So my disclaimer will be, you'll see on the slides that I normally put the information in and use Copilot Design to go design these slides for me. And then there will be things around that. And I've also say, challenge the statistics. Tell me where these statistics are from and give me some that will challenge what my assumptions are. So you'll see those notes as well. So I've got nothing to hide.
Thank you. Graham?
Hi, Graham Hacking from Construction Skills People. A question around the funding model and the way that you obviously did it works, Employer Network and Skills and Training Fund, etc. Will there be a point where the CITB will have a pre-agreed plan for the year of how it's going to go? Just, I know it's obviously recently happened that the Skills and Training Fund seemed like quite a knee-jerk reaction to just stop, bang. Will that be something that the CITB can do moving forward to enable people to pre-plan where they can draw the funding and what funding will be available over a 12-month period? And just going back to last year when there was the offer of the fully funded MVQs, again, that was quite a sort of knee-jerk reaction. So is there something that can be put in place by you guys to help, I guess, the grander scheme of things for pre-planning?
Yeah, so the answer will be, they're not knee-jerk. There is a whole corporate governance structure that sits around a lot of these decisions. But the backdrop to it, I'm going to ask a question, yes. It's the answer, easy answer. Backdrop to this is that my team have engaged with 25% more companies than ever before from the same pot of levy funds. So we've got more people accessing the same amount of money, so there's only so much that can go around. And what we did want to make sure is that there's any risks around double funding and stuff like that was reduced as well and removed. And overwhelmingly, most of the feedback from most of the feedback I can be loud. Most of the feedback from contractors was it's too complicated. We don't know. Is it funded? Is it not funded? What about this? What about this? Oh, this can be funded if you do it this way. This can be funded. Let's simplify it. Make it so that people understand what it is. So that, to your point, you can then plan properly to go, this is my training plan for this 12 months, 6 months, whatever that looks like. It's a long way of saying yes, basically. But yeah, that is the context of it, because I think sometimes people don't necessarily understand the context of there are so many more companies engaging with us, which is really, to the point we said earlier on, is really positive. Shows how good a job I've done, obviously, as an engagement person. But we have, and most of those are disengaged, so people that have never trained before, which is phenomenal. But they are people that are under the thresholds, in the majority of cases, that don't put anything into the levy pot.
Brilliant, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
I noticed no one cheered when I said about what a great job I've done, by the way. But, you know, it's fine. Thank you very much. I'll take that. Thank you.
Hi, John Lees from Burnsley Homes. Is there any statistics around how many apprentices public sector against the private sector employ?
There will be. Yeah, I don't have them on me, but they will be. If you want to connect afterwards, I'll get those.
It's 5% in the public sector versus the private sector.
Right, thank you.
There you go. I don't need to. Thank you. Saved me a job.
Anybody else got any questions?
Russell, I've just got one. You might think I'm off the wall when I say this, but I'm just wondering whether there's a conflict between the way we manage productivity and trying to retain those staff. You know, we want these operatives to start from home. What we don't want them to do is to come into the office. And I just wonder, would I really be keen to join an organisation that really just wants to count the number of jobs I do and keep me out of the office?
I guess that's an operating model for the organisations and who they employ, but it might well be the case that people that focus on volumes over quality, potentially, people become disenfranchised and will look for someone that isn't looking to drive that behaviour. And I think that this is the other side with some of the challenges that exist with regards to speed. Just get it done, just get it done, just get it done, and the knock-on effect around quality and first fixes and stuff like that that sometimes occur. And it's that balance of doing it right at pace as opposed to doing it at pace. But yeah, it is that thing about understanding the people that work for us as well and what works for them. Thanks.
Okay, so anybody else? No, can I just ask, I've got a few questions, Danny, but I'll probably grab you later. But one thing for me is, given the statistics that you've shown, it appears to me that somewhere down the track there's going to be a slowdown. I just wonder, in terms of the groups that you sit on, how is that being predicted now? Because if we haven't got the people, is that going to affect construction going forward, which I think it will? Obviously, that's going to affect the economy as well. And I just wonder what's sort of being picked up around that, because I guess we're all, I mean, John gave us a great presentation about a couple of months back about, you know, turnover 120 million a year and you're still struggling to get people. And I think what I'm trying to say is that, you know, clients are going to be looking to spend that money, which we all know, but the reality is we're going to get to a point where we will not have the people to do it. And how far away do you think we are from that?
That's a question and a half, isn't it? I think we're quite aware. I don't think we're necessarily in the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, because I think there is sufficient demand. I think longer term is where I'm slightly more nervous when you look at the stats around the number of older workers, the reductions in birth rates and young people overall. And I think we'll probably end up getting to a point when we either have to make the changes that we could probably make now around work planning, because I think the average age, whilst I mentioned it was 42.5, in the manual trades it's less, because people just can't do the tasks. But there'll come a time when if you haven't got anybody to do the task, then you just job rotate. And I think that will probably happen in the next probably 10, 15 years, I'd expect. But I think things will change before then. And I think working practices will change through technology or through things coming through. And productivity is an interesting one, because it seems to be this golden goose that people want to milk productivity to get more out of people. And most of the time people think that means working longer hours. And we can change behaviours because we'll pay them by brick rather than on a job, and they'll chase the money. That's just short-sighted, because, again, it's then pace, not quality. At the moment, I don't see it slowing down. All of our evidence is it's not slowing down in terms of outputs. I think the only caveat to that will be, I heard on the radio this morning around taxes, potentially going up in November. not me, before somebody says it was on the radio and they're looking at it from a government perspective. But I know that the impact in terms of roles, when the NI went up earlier on this year, led to quite a few redundancies across the sector. So again, we're talking about bring more people in, bring more people. Actually, there's some really competent, skilled, trained people out there that unfortunately, through no fault of their own, something's happened that's had a knock-on effect because we work from a procurement basis on cost. And if there's these fluctuations, we don't always make a case to do an amendment, and people just stick to the price. So I think there is a degree of understanding that needs to exist amongst the client base, and I have to be careful with who I work for when I talk about this. But I think there is a degree of acceptance amongst the clients that yes, they need to be thinking about cost, but they need to be thinking about cost for the whole supply chain and making sure there's enough margins within it. And that's where things like project bank accounts come in and stuff like that, to make sure that, again, throughout the supply chain, there is confidence to work on site because you know you're going to get paid, and the clients know you're going to get paid. And that we don't fall into that bad habit that sometimes happens where people chase the business and chase contract wins and undercut on prices, because that then just drives people to work in ways that they probably wouldn't necessarily work if they weren't driven by margins. And I think sometimes if everyone just, it's easy to say, stuck, we're not chasing, this is what our costs are, but we're not there, I don't think.
Well, thank you, appreciate that. If there are no more questions, can we show Danny our thanks for his excellent presentation. Thank you, Danny. And I'd like to welcome Etan. He's been with us a few times and he's going to talk to us about Raft. Over to you, Etan. Thanks.
Thanks very much, everyone. My name's Etan. I have presented about 3 times at the Direct Works on different things, but my history is that I'm an ex-gas engineer and plumber. Had boots on the ground business about 6 years ago, moved into software and built a platform called Help Me Fix, which is a video triage platform originally that connected semi-retired trades with residents of rented properties when they had a problem and helped them to fix it and save a call out. And my first presentation here was about that, was about semi-retired engineers, aging workforce, and how we can kind of add value to those people. That business grew over the last 5 years, and we deployed an AI solution, and we currently serve around sort of 300 clients across private rented social housing. About 250,000 properties use our platform in some way. But my passion and what I'm here to talk about today is the trade skills gap. And because I've trained 8 apprentices myself personally, I'm very aware of what's happening across not just the public sector but the private sector as well, and what we're trying to do, and the people in this room and myself as well, to help in some small way. The first thing before I get into this is that I just want to frame what the last question about retention. Why are people leaving the public sector? What's the real problem? And you can dress it up with processes and maybe our recruitment strategy isn't right, maybe this isn't right, maybe that isn't right, but the hard truth is that a multi-trade can earn £300 a day in the private rented sector. That's the hard truth. So they can earn £300 a day, which is £72,000 a year, just fixing doors. A gas engineer can earn £100,000 to £120,000 a year if they work for themselves in the PRS, and that's your problem. That's the root of it. So they come to the social housing sector to train. Great, I've got my qualifications. Hang on a minute, I can go out now in a van and earn 2x, 3 times as much and choose my own jobs and choose my own work rota. However, there's the bad news, but there's some good news as well. Sort of. 300 million people across the world, globally, are going to be displaced. Their jobs are going to be displaced by AI, essentially, which is what's happening. So, unfortunately, for a lot of people, admin workers, they're going to start to be worried about their jobs as AI comes in more and more and more. And what's going to happen? I believe, and the people that I've spoken to believe that those displaced admin workers will seek to retrain in something more dependable. And what's dependable? Something you can do with your hands, something that a robot can't do, something that an AI model can't do. Plastering, plumbing, electrical. So I believe that in the next 5 years, we're going to have a massive influx of potential, and I say potential because there's a whole ream of other problems which I'm going to go into in this presentation, potential recruits that could come into construction and fill that gap. And what will happen when those new recruits come in, cost of labour will go down because that's economics, it's supply and demand. If you've got more people willing to do the job, then the rate for those people goes down and it's all happy days. You've got your trade skills crisis solved. But today I'm going to talk about another massive problem, which is what you touched on, which is employers aren't recruiting those apprentices. It's not that we don't have enough people that are willing. I put out an ad on Facebook in preparation for this presentation today. I put it out yesterday morning about retraining to be a heat pump engineer, and I have 15 inquiries in 24 hours, and I spent 80 quid. So it's not that the demand isn't there, but how are we going to retrain all of these people? I think it's this one. Okay, so just top line stats. So we have a nationwide trade skills shortage. So actually we're going to be about a quarter short of the people we need by 2030. So we're going to be about a quarter of the people that we need for the construction sector just won't be there if we carry on down the same path. Only 5 to 10% of people actually work, of tradespeople actually work in social housing. Usually they even if they train in the public sector, they'll go out to the private sector, they'll start their own businesses, and then they tend to sort of come back later in life when they're looking for job security, they're looking for somewhere where they can have a dependable role. And so what you end up with is a load of training on the front end, and then a load of kind of older tradespeople on the back end that are heading towards retirement, but you're missing out on that big gap in between. And obviously social housing providers, you're all really worried. Everyone's worried about this and talking about how we can invest in new entrants coming into the sector, but also how do we keep them? So that's the other big thing there. So there's a cost associated with training an apprentice, right? So you've got essentially wages for the first couple of years, 2-3 years, before they actually become capable enough to be out on their own and doing a day-to-day job. You've got the slowdown cost. So if you put an apprentice with an engineer, that engineer has to step back and allow that trainee to do the work, which slows them down on the job. So you've got the slowdown cost, which directly impacts productivity. Equipment, materials, admin, recruiting them, actually getting them onto the payroll in the first place. The government funding, if you go via the City and Guilds route, only really covers the classroom, right? So employers get a certain amount for each apprentice. I think it's between £1,000 and £3,000 that you get for each apprentice, but they cover the coursework. And I have spent the last month meeting with independent trades businesses across the south of England and asking them, what's the problem? Like, why aren't you recruiting apprentices? Why aren't you training these people? And the answer is simple. It's this commitment. They don't want to have to invest 3 years of cash and training into an apprentice that essentially is going to leave and become their competitor. And there isn't enough support from the government. So that's the message I'm getting. There isn't enough support for training apprentices, and it's a huge investment to be able to train someone and then potentially that person to leave. And so what I'm getting is from the tradespeople in my network and the ones that I know is that they're just not taking on apprentices. But then they can't recruit because there's not enough apprentices that are qualified and become skilled trades. So it's like this vicious cycle, right? They don't want to take on new apprentices, but they can't recruit. And so this, I think, this is the real problem, in my opinion. It's the fact that employers in the private rented sector aren't training enough apprentices. So there's not enough trades to go around. And on top of that, even if you do recruit an apprentice, somewhere between 45 and 48% of those don't finish their training. So they drop out halfway through. And why do they drop out? What are the reasons for that? Redundancy. First thing you cut. Things get tough, cut the labour that isn't producing. And that's not a stamp on social housing. That's across all sectors. You cut where you can. And as obviously competition increases, those apprentices are being cut. Lack of support, both on the job and outside of the job. So apprentices that can't actually do the training that they need to do because someone's trying to meet quota and they're like, I've got to get my 5 jobs, I've got to get my 6 jobs out, so I haven't got time for you to take 2 hours to change a tap, or I haven't got time for you to spend extra time, fixing this door. And also the financial pressures as well. So first-year apprentice wages are pretty low. So all of the people, the older recruits that want to come into trades, and they're there. There are people that want to retrain. I'm seeing them every day. It's not viable for them financially to be able to jump into that first-year apprenticeship because of the massive dip. If they've got a mortgage, they've got kids, they've got responsibilities, it's too difficult. And so we're in this kind of limbo. So what is Raft? So Raft is a not-for-profit organisation that myself and other people in this room have come together to create, to help to try and solve these problems. So we started life essentially donating software to apprentices to support them through their last year of education and first year out on the tools. So some of the tools we provide are AI assistance, so when they're on the job and they need a bit of help, they can basically ask an AI. We've got a button they can click if they're stuck on a job that connects them to Bob, who's a retired plumber 100 miles away, and Bob will help them through the job. We've got a platform where they can essentially gather evidence for their portfolio while they're out and about, and then click a button and it generates an AI digital portfolio. It's super cool, and yeah, really cool one there. But the idea is that we're pulling together products and services to help trainees through their apprenticeship. We've been pulling in support from people like City Plumbing, who are donating tools and supplies to apprentices so that to help them through their course. But what I realised about 5-6 months in is that that's great, but it's not enough. That's not going to move the needle to help these apprentices get where they want to be. We support, by the way, at the moment, RAF supports a number of schools and colleges and also places for people to thrive. We've got Jen in the room here, and we're supporting them with our software. It's completely free for schools, educational institutions, and apprentices. Will I be able to play this video? If I can't, I can just skip past it. It's okay. I'll skip past the video. Sorry. But the video's in the deck, so if you want to watch the video, it's pretty cool. So as I said, over the past couple of months, I've been speaking with employers, I've been speaking with training centres, and we're going to take Raft past just digital support for apprentices. So essentially what we're doing is we're working with training centres to create fast-track route to work courses so that they can essentially get their on-site experience and their qualifications within 12 months and come out at the end of that 12-month placement as a fully qualified plumber, gas engineer, electrician. We're matching the recruits with local trades businesses and social housing providers and placing them there free of charge. So essentially that shifts the model. So instead of having to employ an apprentice and train them up within the organisation, if you partner with the programme, we'll place someone with your organisation for 12 months with a qualified engineer, and there's no cost to you at all. And at the end of the 12 months, there's a route to work. You can then offer that trainee a full-time position within the organisation. And we've been working really hard with 2 training centres in the south of England to create these courses so that we can take them out to individuals. We're issuing bursaries for apprentices to help them with equipment costs, help them with travel costs, to help them transition from where they are at the moment, which is potentially looking to retrain in a skilled trade, to actually getting qualified and getting the experience they need within a shorter space of time to help to close that gap. So we're launching a program, firstly in Bedfordshire, called Raft Compass. We're working with the London Gas Training Centre and the Professional Tiling Centre to essentially offer out these courses to not just young learners, but mature learners that are looking to retrain. Now, obviously, if in this model, the learner initially has to cover the cost of that training. So if you've got a mature learner that's looking to retrain and move over, the idea is that they cover the cost of the training for 12 months. But we're looking for ways to support those learners by subsidising those costs, either by 100% or at least partially, so that we can enable to them to get into work faster. And we're also launching let me just get this right, an earn while you learn model, which means that they can do part-time training with a placement with a field team and do their classwork training in the evenings so that they can keep hold of their current position until they're ready to transition. And we believe that with this blended model, we'll be able to get people from point A, where they are at the moment, terrified of losing their job to some AI model, to point B as a fully qualified tradesperson. In addition to that, we're offering all of the digital tools that we already offer, so video support throughout the apprenticeship, or you can't call it an apprenticeship because it's not a government route. This is a managed learning route. Is that right? The additional tools. So we've got, again, donations from City Plumbing, our partners for equipment and tools. We've got digital support provided by our partners at Help Me Fix, which I happen to own, which is great. So Help Me Fix is donating software and people for that support as well. And then access to all other resources and services. We're partners with the Apprentices Association and Lighthouse Charity to get them moral support, emotional support through that period of transition as well. So we launch this program next month in the south of England. So we're going to launch it across the south of England. If it's successful, we're going to bring on 20 cohorts into the first program, and if it's successful, we'll then roll out up into the north of England. But we need help. We need support. So we're looking for any organisation that wants to partner with us to train those apprentices on site. As I said, it's completely free of charge. There's no employment commitment. It's a voluntary position with a route to work option at the end. Or for any organisations that want to support Raft by making either a one-off or a regular donation to the programme so that we can roll out more quickly. Essentially, if you're looking to support something that's worthwhile, this is probably the most worthwhile cause that you could support, because if we don't all club together and we don't all work together to solve this problem, there aren't going to be enough people to repair all of the broken homes or build the new ones that we need to build moving forwards. So if you're interested in learning more, you'd like to understand how these route to work programs work, you'd like to partner with us to place trainees with your organisation, or you're interested in supporting us with donations, we've already brought on several software partners that are supporting us. Arion is donating to the programme on a regular basis to support our growth. I know that everyone sometimes thinks that they're the big bad wolf, but in this case they're not. They care, and they're helping us. So if you think that your organisation can support our programme, please speak to either myself, Jen, or Russell, who are on our board of trustees, to help us make this a reality over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Done. Thanks, Etan. You're not getting away with it yet. Any questions for Etan? Go on, Colin.
Most of Place for People, sorry. Yeah, morning, Etan. Colin Erskine, obviously from Place for People. So one of my questions really is, the traditional model of apprenticeships is electrician, joiner, gas engineer, and so on and so on and so on. So isn't it time really now we looked at the apprenticeships within themselves, because you hit the nail on the head really at the beginning of your presentation, was to have people multitasked, multi-trades. So if you think of a customer and a customer journey when we're going into social housing, we're sending a plumber sometimes, we're sending a joiner to pair up with them if it's a kitchen repair. If we look at our contractors, obviously they have the same trades, but we really need to change the way we're operating, because for me at the moment in time, if I look at repairs and maintenance, we have all these different trades we've got to send in. If we do a kitchen, we're sending 7 different trades in.
You're right.
And we really, if we had a kitchen fitted in your own house, you'd probably have one or two guys, which would probably be a plasterer, potentially. You'd have your kitchen fitter, you'll have your electrician. That's probably it. Or unless you've got gas, which you need to cap off or whatever. Yeah. But that's about it. So we need to be changing the way we're doing our apprenticeships, and we need to be making more people multi-trade, so that I understand there's a risk of them still moving on, but for a housing association industry, that will bring more customer satisfaction for our customers, more customer engagement, and actually will help the businesses, you know, the housing associations, and cut costs along the way as well.
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head, and this is why I love Thrive's model as well. So when I went down to Thrive Academy, just fantastic work there. You know, basically training multi-capable tradespeople, and it's a model that, sorry, we're sort of nicking over down in Bedfordshire, where the professional tiling centre is not just a tiling centre, it's teaching everything to do with bathrooms and kitchens. So we're basically building multi-trade courses, bathroom fitting courses, kitchen courses as routes to work, so that when we have an entrant that exits, they are capable, they can do multiple different trades. On the London Gas Training Centre side, which is one of our training centre partners in Bedfordshire, it's more the kind of harder skills. So we've got a course for gas, a course for plumbing, one for renewables, and one for electrical. But on the other side, one of our training centres, we're putting together courses, just as you say, that cover all of those different trades, so that they can go out. And you're absolutely right. So I'm just about to have my bathroom done in my house, and I got one guy basically who's doing the whole lot. He's coming in, and that's important for residents as well. You don't want to have 10 different people traipsing through the house at different times, and it's a logistical nightmare to organise as a job. So I think you've hit a really good point there, and I think this is all about reimagining training, right? So the traditional routes that worked maybe in the 80s and 90s, perhaps that's not the model that we should be sticking to anymore, because times are changing and needs are changing, and what we're trying to do is almost like turn the whole training model on its head slightly, and make it really attractive for those new recruits and really easy for them to get qualified, and then make them extremely useful once they finish those qualifications.
Thank you.
Come on, Jen. I know.
Hi.
So, just so the audience can get clear, the 12-month fast track, would the learner come out with an apprenticeship at the end, or is it not an apprenticeship?
It's not an apprenticeship in the official. You can't call it an apprenticeship unless it's a government apprenticeship. We're talking managed. Basically, it's a managed learning program. Okay, so they still get the qualifications, they still get the experience. If it's gas, they'll get their ACS at the end. If it's heat pumps, they'll get their renewable certificate, they'll get their water regs, they'll get their unvented, whatever they need. But it's not a traditional apprenticeship model, because for it to be an apprenticeship, it has to be government funded, basically. It has to go through the colleges. So we're coming up with an alternate route to work, because these exist at the moment, okay, but they exist in a get qualified in 6 weeks and you'll be gas safe. And that just creates dangerous people. That's not, in my opinion, that's not the right way to train someone. They need a combination of on-site experience so that they can do the job, and they need the right classroom qualifications. And that does need to be stretched in time, but does it need to be stretched into 3 years? That's my question here. Or can that be condensed and made more intensive as long as they come out with the right bits at the end?
Over the 12 months, what is the ratio classroom to practical?
That's a really good question, and it's something that I can share afterwards. I'll share how the programs are split down. We're still actually building these programs right now. So we're in the process of building and launching the individual programs, and I'm working with the training centres maybe 2-3 days a week at the moment to understand exactly what the blend looks like and how the intensive program and the Earn While You Learn program will be constructed. But I'm really happy to share with you after this presentation, basically.
Brilliant, thanks. Sorry, just before I come in, the video is available if you want to play it. Do I play it or not?
It's a bit fluffy now, it's a bit late, but that's fine. You can access it in the slide deck.
Okay, no, thanks anyway, Matt, thank you. Next question.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that the apprentices will start at the beginning of their career. They'll up sticks, go private sector because it's more lucrative, and we'll get them when they're, reached an age where you're experiencing musculoskeletal issues, and there's issues with regards to sickness, absenteeism at that stage. It doesn't sound like there's any hope within the public sector, because it doesn't seem that we're bridging the gap.
No, but
if that's the, that's where we are. So is there any hope, or can you see anything on the horizon to give us some positivity?
So with any kind of economics, right, you've got supply and demand. Okay, it's as simple as that. So the more scarce something is, the more they can charge basically for that service. Now at the moment, they're really scarce. Okay, and so therefore they can earn £300, £400, £500 a day in the private rented sector working for themselves. And again, this does hinge on a bit of a personal belief of mine, but I do truly believe, and the data suggests, and all the studies that are out there at the moment suggest, that there's going to be a mass workforce displacement over the next kind of 5 years. So essentially, people that are in computer-facing roles at the moment may need to retrain in other areas as those jobs become automated away by all of the great tools that we're looking at in our AI transformation strategies and all that kind of good stuff. And that is going to create a glut of entrants into the construction sector, as well as the others, as well as like nurses, mechanics, anything that's physical that you can do with your hands. And that will reset, as long as we can train those people, that will reset the economic imbalance between what they can earn now out in the private rented sector versus what a salary would be in the social housing sector, because there'll be more people and therefore the economics will flatten out. That's the basic mathematics around it. So yes, there's hope, massive hope. But at the moment, the employers aren't taking on those trainees. So unless we fix that problem, you'll just have a load of people that can't find work. We need to fix that problem. And I think that the reason that we're turning the model on its head, and essentially rather than asking someone to commit to 3 years training someone and pay them a salary, we're shifting that around, especially with mature entrants, into this is your new university loan. You invest in your future, and Raft will help to subsidise those costs so it's more affordable for you. That's the model.
Okay, anybody else want to ask a question? No, I've got a couple as usual. Interesting what you've just said around that, and I'd be interested in Danny's opinion on this. What about industry to industry? We see where other industries, people fall into redundancy and there seems no hope. It almost seems to me there's ready-made people that are in a bucket ready to go, and I guess you guys are getting more connected with government, but is that happening industry to industry? Because it just seems a natural shift for me that we can bring people in that, I don't know, it could be steel at the moment. We've seen, you know, lots of threats around British Steel, etc. So just welcome your thoughts on that and how connected you are maybe with what's actually going to be happening or not happening.
Yeah, please.
So, yeah, no, we do see that there's quite a few that we change. So the skills boot camps is a classic example where people go in to get upskilled. The move towards more fast-track apprenticeships, which is kind of what you're talking about with traineeships, where people, instead of it being 3 years, they can get trained and qualified in 12 to 14 months. It's been really popular, especially with some of the more career changes, which is delivered through like a block release, depending on the trade. Weeks on site, then come off site. And yes, that probably will start to help, but I think fundamentally most of these will be attached to an employer. So it's contingent on an employer kind of taking them through so they can draw down apprenticeship grant or skills further and stuff like that. It's contingent on that. So yes, people can transfer across, but there needs to be something to transfer into. It's not just more educational programs, because like as you just said, there's no outcomes. The only thing I was going to say in terms of multi-skills, one thing that I'm conscious of is that there is a modular system that's underway around multi-skills. So some of the access qualifications are, so at the moment we're doing a pilot at Chesterfield College, which is getting labourers to learn one of 4 trades, which is associated with home building over 4 to 6 weeks. So it's starting to build up skills and knowledge and competence to say actually I can do this as a pathway into further education and apprenticeships. There's giving them more skills on the side, there's more tasters and bite-sized chunks. They can do something else other than just labour or just a trade. They've got enough, but if it does lead to a full-blown apprenticeship or qualification, then that would then do the next step on from that. But the industry-to-industry thing will happen and is happening, but it is contingent on employers employing it ultimately. Otherwise, we're just going to have loads of people spending money to do the training to then do it as DIY, aren't we?
It just seems to me that the government know this is going to happen, and we've seen it, haven't we? That there's already a ready-made workforce, but we're doing nothing about it. And I just wondered if you'd got more of a feel for how government are actually addressing that, because they're certainly not doing it now, from what I can see. And if they are, then I'm wrong. But I don't necessarily see it. That's all.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's happened recently that we probably would have seen is that our sponsoring body, CITB, has moved to DWP. And I don't think lots of people picked up on that. So rather than being part of education, and now be part of the work pension, so there's a bit broader focus, or the expectation is that might be a broader focus on skills and placements and jobs as much as education. So we've seen what comes out from that. That's only the last few weeks.
And again, another question on that, well, I suppose it's related as well, but from an education point of view, is there any thoughts around changing the curriculum, especially for maybe between 11 and 16, where maybe the final 2 years includes something around a trade, and whether other countries do it? I think France do it, and I think other countries are picking up or have picked up on that over the years. Is there any thought around that, about having a ready-made apprenticeship line of young people that actually want to come into the industry?
Our focus in terms of the Training Act is post-education, so it's predominantly 16 plus, and that's why we can't, as CITB, go into school and support school, because that's another thing we often get. Why don't you primary schools? Because we can't. It's outside of the Act. So this was where the T-levels were meant to have been doing the Act, but they didn't really land and work as intended. And I think the challenge there is, on my view, rather than the view of the organisation for which I work, is because I don't think there was necessarily marketing on it. And I think a lot of T-levels were those people that probably didn't necessarily have an interest in construction, but were seen to be disruptive or something else, and suddenly go, let's get that part into this space, and then we don't need to think about them. And that's not necessarily the right approach that we want for the industry, because we want it to be an aspirational industry, not as an industry of last resort. And I think the other thing that's happened recently with the apprenticeships and the numbers that we mentioned with 47%, I don't think it's helped that we've had this hard and fast rule thing you need to have grades A to C for English and maths, because you potentially struggle through school. And we know so many apprentices that excel and really actually deliver great work in the trades, but can't get the apprenticeship because they can't get an A to C grade in English and maths. So it changed post-18, but it's about having a conversation about, well, that's great. So do you now need people to wait until they're 18 to then get that? Or can we actually have that transitional period from 16 to 18 where if they have struggled with English and maths and make it more vocational in its outcome? So actually, yes, they've great, but it's more relevant to the work that they're intending to do as part of apprenticeship and trade. That's something that I keep my eye on.
Brilliant, thank you, it makes sense. Anybody else got any questions for Eton? No?
Just on that, Russell. So I was at Westfield Academy in Watford 2 weeks ago. They are an academy. Okay, so it's important to understand that they essentially have a bit more flexibility, but they have some amazing facilities down there. They have one for construction where kids can go and essentially put pipes together and learn how to do plumbing and trades. And then they've got another one which I was massively impressed with hairdressing. They've got a salon down there, and they're training people on that aren't going to go down an academic route, to do something that they love. And so it is happening, but it's more kind of academies and things like that are offering it. I honestly believe that we cannot afford to wait for the government to catch up on this one. That something else needs to happen to be able to move the needle. And then industry to industry, we see a lot of demand from the services, so armed forces, people coming out the army, coming out the navy. They've already got, potentially working with tanks and things like that. They're able to use their hands, and they're very, very keen, and they want to retrain. But again, they can't get the placement with the trades business to be able to do and then that seems to be the bottleneck that I keep hitting.
I think if we could tap into that levy, somebody like you, and I think Danny and everybody else could go to town on this, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important government factor as well. There's a significant amount of funds within the apprenticeship levy, which I don't think necessarily has been rolled out, but that's a personal view, and I've not seen anything to change that view. But there's some money there that if people could start knocking on the door would certainly release the opportunity to get people properly trained, as you rightly say, competent as well, and bring the people back that, that want to work in the industry.
Sorry, on that though, I think a large part of that though is also pipeline.
Yeah,
That's where the clients come in. I think if you know that for the next 12, 24, 36, 48 months you've got a solid pipeline, you're going to get paid, that would play into, yes, I've got confidence to take somebody on. And I think, because the flip side of it is, we're all bound by Section 106s, and people take people for that period of time when they're working on projects in that location, and then at the end of that they go, no, now you need to get somebody with a different postcode, rather than let's keep this apprentice and move them through. So I think there needs to be
I know government have been talking, haven't they, to major clients as well, saying, look, give us a forward plan, and we'll have a clue then about how many people we want. Yeah, I totally get that. But I guess we're just been fumbling around the dark, I suppose, for a while, haven't we? We need to start shining that light on something. Brilliant. Anybody else? Brilliant. Can we show appreciation to Eton? Thank you very much. Okay, folks, we're going to break for 15 minutes. So what, we're on 20 past now, so 25 to 22, please, if we can. Thank you. Okay, everybody, can we take our seats again, please? Hello, can we take our seats, please? Thank you. Yeah, you're all right, don't, you know. Yeah. Okay, everybody, I'd like to welcome Jen Radcliffe, Jen Radcliffe to the stage. Thanks, Jen.
Let me just make sure I get the clicker working properly. Yes, that's right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Radcliffe, Head of Partnerships at PFP Thrive. Some of you in this room have met me before, so it's nice to see you all again. To the new faces, nice to meet you. I am Head of Partnerships, which means I'm taking our mission of PFP Thrive out to the rest of the housing sector. So today I'm going to talk to you about some of the initiatives that we are starting to implement to help upskill our existing workforce within the housing sector. First, I'll give you a bit of an intro to PFP Thrive, who we are and why we've come about. So, PFP Thrive is part of the Places for People group, which is an organisation some of you may have heard of. We're one of the largest housing providers in the UK, and the idea for a training provider came about from our talent and development team having various discussions with our exec on the training provision we were receiving as a housing organisation. That's training provision from colleges for apprentices and also from private training providers. The T&D team did a huge exercise on this training provision, and I'll give you some examples of what came back. So we had 2.5 years ago a group of 10 carpentry apprentices join us. They were based in various parts of the country and went to 3 different colleges. The running theme through all 3 colleges were they were taught how to be a carpenter at first or second fix, but not taught how to be a carpenter within repairs and maintenance. They also weren't taught anything around customer care and customer service. And they were taught in 3 completely different ways that wasn't relative to the housing sector. Another example I can give you is we engaged with a private training provider for first aid training. We engaged with it was a national training provider. We engaged with them for first aid training across the country with 10 different classes. Out of the 10 different classes, 3 of those classes tutors finished their course 2 hours early for a full day first aid training, which I don't know if you agree, but it's pretty important that you cover everything in a first aid training session in order to get a first aid certificate and essentially possibly be able to save someone's life. So our training and development team put together a plan to create an internal training provision for PFP. As the conversations went on with our exec and our board, it became apparent that the idea could be utilised across the sector and we could be a real force for good within the housing sector. We all have the same challenges. I've put some of them on the board here. So we're all facing the same issues around skill shortages. We're all facing some of the same issues around the training quality that we receive. And again, I'll go back to the fact that, is it social housing specific? With regards to future skills, there are a number of training providers across the country that currently supply those future skills that we're crying out for at the moment. But are there enough? And are they really social housing specific? And last but not least, which I think is one of the most important parts, is how does that training impact the customers and communities that we serve? And in that, I mean, not just training our employees up to be excellent people in the specialism that they do, but how do we connect our training to the demographic of unemployed customers that every single one of us has as housing providers? So PFP decided to invest, and with that came PFP Thrive. We're an external training provider, Ofsted regulated, so we operate as a learning centre and a college. This is our main HQ in Derby, which is our main academy. From Derby, we deliver all of our trades-based apprenticeships and other non-trades courses. For now, the trades apprentices are only based in Derby. We work off a block release model, so it was really interesting, the question you had around Scotland and your apprentice not being able to travel. So our apprentices, if they're not commutable to Derby, they come to us for 1 week of the month and they stay with us. And if you're a CITB levy payer, it's a shame that Danny's gone, you can access the travel to train bursary, which you get 85% of your travel and accommodation cost back, which is why I asked the question to Danny on how do we get this opened up to more housing providers, because it's really important. So just to give you an idea of some of the locations that we're based at, the two big pink dots you'll see are where we deliver our practical-based training from at the moment. So the big dot is Derby, the smaller dot is Preston. Eventually, we will have trades running out of the northwest as well, and we are already looking for a hub in the south to deliver those trades-based apprenticeships from. All of the yellow dots are where we can deliver anything that's non-practical, so anything you don't need a bay, the use of tools for, that's classroom-based, we can deliver from any one of those classroom hubs. And if you've got a cohort of 10 or more people, we can also come to your organisations as well and deliver from you. We offer 3 different types of training, so flexible apprenticeships, short courses and organisational development. And to give you an idea of some of the actual courses that we offer at the moment, we offer a range of trades and non-trades based apprenticeships. To just touch on what Etan said before as well around the length of trades apprenticeships, you're completely right. They are long and they're thorough, but they're not housing specific. So what we've done with our apprenticeships is, with the structure of the modules that you get for some apprenticeships, you'll get 12 modules. We've reorganised those modules so the housing-related modules come first. Also, all of our trades tutors are ex-housing tradespeople, so they've been instrumental in creating the course content. And because of this, we've not only got what's in the module, we've also interwoven housing maintenance into it. So your apprentices will come out of their apprenticeship fully competent in the world of social housing. Not only that, in the picture I just showed you of our Derby Academy, on the first floor we've got a full mock-up of a customer home, so a customer apartment. So everyone that's coming through our apprenticeships, whether that's trades or non-trades, will have a module in role-play customer service. We've got a bank of 20 case study scenarios, from hoarding to damp and mould to safeguarding with children. And what we're trying to achieve with that is preparing our workforce for all the eventualities that they might come into contact with being a customer-facing person in the housing sector. We find it's our why. If we aren't preparing people and we aren't giving them all the eventualities that they could come into contact with and helping them with their confidence, but also to give them better skills, we won't retain those people. It's not always an easy job being a customer-facing person in the housing sector, so if we can support them from entry level onwards, it will help with those retention rates. These are some of the short courses that we offer, just to give you an idea of the housing-related courses that we offer. But today I'm here to speak to you more about some of the approaches we're taking to upskill our existing workforce. So we've looked at 4 different areas so far. And those areas we've looked at are because of the conversations we've had with our partners. So this isn't us saying, this is what we have to do, this is how you have to change the sector. These have come about from conversations we've had with housing providers or housing contractors. And we can't make this work unless we keep having these conversations and everybody's working together. I don't anticipate that we will be the only organisation to do this. Etan is already doing something himself, and the other organisations will follow on. But that's what we want. We want to encourage people to have these conversations about, why aren't we already doing this? Like, this sounds logical. We need to start doing these things. So 4 of the areas that we've currently looked at are customer service, multi-skilled trades assessment, huge topic at the moment, obviously damp and mould with Arab's Law, and also green skills. So the first one, our customer service angle. So we've introduced what's called a service in housing apprenticeship, which is essentially the housing level 3 or level 4 apprenticeship with 4 modules of customer service training interwoven that are endorsed by the Institute of Customer Service. This came about because our internal housing function wanted to put people through a housing apprenticeship. Obviously, the professionalisation of housing is coming recently, and our MD of our housing sector said, well, what can we do for housing officers? Like, how can we help, how can we support them with their career journey? So we showed the level 3 housing apprenticeship, and it came back it's a lot of policy, it's a lot of law. There's not much customer service involved in it, and the job of a housing officer is mainly customer service. So we went away, we worked with the Institute of Customer Service to create this course. We deliver it in a level 3 and a level 4. And what's really interesting about this is, you know, I'm stood in front of a room of repairs and maintenance and asset management people, but actually, to give you a live example, one of our partners, Novis, has just introduced this course to 12 of their staff. So they're putting 12 people within their organisation through the housing and service apprenticeship, which I think is a really dynamic way of a contractor viewing things, of how important our customers are to them as their client. So it's a really important tool, and we're finding it very popular at the moment. The next thing we looked at is multi-skilled trades. So the conversations that came about to create this was a conversation with, and the person's not in the room, but sometimes he is, I won't mention his name. This organisation has quite a large DLO. They have specific tradespeople, and they also have multi-skilled tradespeople that are paid slightly higher. The only process they have to determine if that person is multi-skill is a face-to-face interview at the moment. So the conversation between us and this organisation was, can we create something where we can assess their trades operatives to determine whether they are true multi-skill people? The example that we gave was, they employed someone as a multi-skill operative, and on conversation on paper looked great. But then it transpired that every time a planner would call them about a job that involved plumbing, they would run a mile and just avoid. And the data actually showed that. So what we've done is create a 4 or 5 day course, depending on the needs of the employer, to do upskill training on each specific trade. And on the last day, that person does a live assessment. It's a pass or fail. And then the employer, one, has got the confidence to know that that person is a true multi-skiller. That individual can then take that and has it as that's their certificate that they can add to their CPD, to their experience. And also, we're also going to utilise it for existing multi-skilled people that want to upskill in certain areas where they don't feel confident as well. We're finding that that's proving very popular too. The next area that we've started to cover, and it's prevalent in all parts of the sector, is Awab's Law. So Awab's Law is coming into force later this month. We all know this. What we found when we did our research on current training provision was there were a lot of Awab's Law webinars, there were a lot of Awab's Law e-learning, and there was a lot of one-day courses. What we didn't find was anything specific to different areas of housing, because depending on what area of the sector you work in, whether you work in repairs, whether you work in assets, whether you work in trades, the conversation is different. The conversation is different. Your responsibilities are different. So why isn't there something out there that we can deliver specific to a repairs and maintenance team? So that's what we've done. We've created a suite of 5 different courses, one specific to repairs and maintenance, one specific to housing management staff, one specific to trades operatives, because most importantly, they're usually the first point of contact with the customer when it comes to damp and mould. And it's not just around identifying damp and mould, it's around how do you have that conversation with a customer? And that's the big piece for us. Like, it's a high pressure conversation for everyone involved. How do we upskill someone, or how do we make people feel competent and confident that they're saying the correct things and also not implicating themselves in any way? We've also created one for customer contact centre for people who are ringing in and asking these questions. And last but not least, there was nothing out there that we could find that trained exec and board level people on their responsibilities when it comes to Awab's Law. We focus on lower level staff, we focus on trades operatives, we focus on housing officers. But actually, Awab's Law runs right through an organisation with regards to responsibility level. So we've created an exec and board level course as well. And last but not least, which is my personal favourite, only because I know how important it is. So we looked into damp and mould courses, again, relating to Awab's Law. It's a high-pressure subject within the sector at the moment, and we understand the nuances around what it takes to be a damp and mould surveyor. When we looked into the courses that were available on damp and mould and also HHSRS, everything we could find was mainly classroom or online based with no practical end assessment. On the research we did within our own Healthy Homes function and trades operative function, we sent out a survey, and the survey came back to say most operatives felt uncomfortable, not confident on using the apparatus that it took to perform a damp and mould survey. Most surveyors and operatives coming into that role were really not confident at having that conversation with the customer. So we've created a 4-day course. The first 3 days are either online or in classroom, and we cover HHSRS, damp and mould, and customer engagement. And the last day of the course, we invite our attendees to our academy in Derby, where they'll do a 5-point end assessment. And that 5-point end assessment will involve a dummy survey, a conversation with the customer, a report written exercise, to make sure how they can come out of that course feeling confident that they can go out and do a competent damp and mould survey and have a good conversation with the customer around it. And for our employers, they have the confidence that they're sending the right people out into the field who know what they're doing. We feel that strongly about this course. We're in the process of having it assured by City and Guilds. That course will run from February onwards. And what we're hoping is it becomes a sector-specific course. Like, this is what you need to have as a damp and mould surveyor to go into someone's property and perform damp and mould surveys. But, and last but not least, I forgot about green skills. Importantly, really shouldn't. Last but not least, we cover a host of green skills courses as well. We run boot camps, we run individual courses around air source heat pump, solar panels, and EV charging. Now, what we do to maintain our ethos around what we're trying to deliver is we can deliver those as boot camps, so we add in sector-specific training into it as well as air source heat pump. We can also just tailor that to what the organisation needs. So some organisations require install, repairs and maintenance. Some organisations only require repairs and maintenance. But we cover all those as well. What I would say is that we can't do this alone. I mentioned this earlier on. Like, we're working in partnership with lots of organisations across the sector now. We work with ETAN from Raft, we work with housing providers, maintenance contractors, local authorities, and our strategic partners as well, who are supporting us through this mission. What I'd like to leave you on is to think within your own organisations, where do you feel that your workforce needs to be upskilled? And is there a training course that fits that requirement yet? If there's not, come and speak to me about it. Thank you.
Matt? Any questions for Jen? Come on, there must be some. Come on. Yeah, go on, Ethan.
Jen, it's not a question. I just wanted to say to everyone that I've been to the Thrive Academy in Derby, and looking at it from as a trades professional, it's probably one of the most comprehensive learning environments I've ever seen. They deal with real-world situations, not just how to first fix a bathroom, but actually getting to a property where the tiles are falling off the wall and you've got, multiple problems to deal with, which is an approach that I haven't seen in any of the other training centres that I've been to. So I'd highly recommend Thrive to anyone here.
Yeah, I think that comes from one of the pluses of having our tutors. They've all worked within the housing sector. So our trades tutors are ex-housing tradespeople. Our housing tutors are ex-housing professionals. And as Etan said, particularly our trades tutors, they're so passionate about what they do. And the way they've interwoven repairs and maintenance into these courses is fantastic. PMO is a great example, which obviously Direct Works was instrumental in creating. Our PMO tutor, and to quote him, he'll get them to plasterboard, plaster, and then paint the wall, and the students will go off for the dinner, and he's just going to knock holes in the wall. Then he's going to teach them how to patch plaster, but you wouldn't get that in a college, and that's the bit that I think the sector's missing at the moment.
Anybody got any questions? Just one from me, and I think Etan mentioned it before, and I think Danny did to a degree, is it's fine once you've got people trained. How do you maintain the competence? Because that is a real key, and I know if people remember back, that was something Keith always was knocking on the door of. Yeah. How do you how do we keep people competent? And I think that's the next task, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah. I think it's great. We've got everything, you know, moving forward. We've got these courses, and we're getting more of a span of courses. But I think, you know, we do need to make sure that the people we've got are competent, because we've got a lot of people out there. I'm not necessarily saying this sector, and we've got some in this sector, and we've got some in construction who just aren't competent. They've got a badge or a certificate, but you know, that's for learning. It's the next bit, isn't it? And that's not to put down on what you do, because it's brilliant. It's fantastic.
I agree, and I think if you look at the way the other side of the housing sector's gone with the professionalisation, I don't see why this couldn't be a route for the property services and repairs and maintenance side of the sector. Why shouldn't there be some competency-based assessments throughout your career? I think it'd be great for us. I think it'd be, it'd encourage people to stay, because they can see that career path, and it's honoured with a qualification. So yeah, I think it's something we should definitely talk about.
Anybody else?
Russell?
Yeah, Mike.
Oh, yeah. Neil Causer, Wolverhampton Homes. It's not a question, it's a comment. I've been to many colleges over the years, and the syllabus is like this, and we deliver it like this. But you put it in a practical aspect, and you've just mentioned 4 courses that I'm really interested in, so I'll come and speak to you later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's one of the reasons we were created. Places People are a housing provider itself, so they understand the needs and wants of what the sector is, and it is very rigid with a lot of training providers and colleges, especially around apprenticeships. It's like, this is what we do. We've had quite a lot of partners come to us at the last minute because they've been let down by a college because they wouldn't put their student through a carpentry degree because they don't evidence enough roofing. When actually what we're doing now is we're liaising with City and Guilds around the carpentry level 2 to say, this is not what our sector needs. We'll do this, this, this and this, and we can demonstrate all those. We can demonstrate a little bit of roofing, but that's because roofing is only 2% of what our repairs and maintenance carpenters are going to do. So let's work together to ensure that we aren't having people miss out, because like Etan said, 5% of tradespeople in the housing sector. It's not enough, and it's because there are so many barriers around being able to learn from the entry level.
Thanks, Jan. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just hang on a minute, please.
I think it's more of an observation as well. So I'd be interested to know internally, in terms of your surveying staff, what's this been like for them? Because something that we definitely are struggling across the sector in terms of surveyors. Obviously, everyone's going into them, you get paid more. But it's around the competencies of those surveyors. So down in London, an organisation that I've worked for, I know one can do a damp and mould survey, but in terms of the HHSRS, I was on the same course and 5 people failed. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's around how has that been for you guys, and have you seen basically an increase in the competency and the longevity of them staying within the organisation?
Yeah, and this is why we've created this course, because that's one. As an organisation, like the rest of the sector, before my job at PFP, some of you know, I worked in recruitment, so I understood and I specialised in surveyors mainly. So the shortage of good building surveyors, because no one's training to be a building surveyor in social housing anymore as much. So we're losing people to retirement, and people are going interim. So one of the reasons we created this course was to upskill people into those roles. So you might not have been to university to become a building surveyor, but you might have come up through the tools to become a repairs inspector. And then we can supplement that with this training to make sure you're competent in the areas that you need to be a damp and mould surveyor as well.
Just on that point, I mean, do most people know Professor Michael Perrott? They must have seen him, talked to him, or been involved or something. Yeah? He's probably the most well-known person around damp and mould. I got invited to a conversation a couple of weeks back around the qualification that he's going to try and, well, not try, will do it, because he's that kind of guy, isn't he? A level 4, level 5, and he's already talked to the government about this, because they use him obviously as expert witness and everything else in terms of damp and mould. But he's even talking about whether the government will make that mandatory for damp and mould. So that's something just to be aware of. Yeah. He'll push on with that, because anybody that knows him knows he's that kind of guy. He doesn't take no for an answer. He knows his stuff. There's no one in here, I think, that could even push him in terms of his knowledge. It's just, you know, he's like an encyclopedia, to be honest with you, about building pathology. And one of his comments has been is that people don't understand the pathology of building, and surveyors in particular. And he wants to have a go at surveyors, but he was saying exactly your point, Kelsey, to be fair. is that the competency isn't there, and I think we suffer as a sector because of that as well. And that's not having a go at them, don't get me wrong. That's all about training and everything else that's there, and competency. But anyway, just watch your space, because I think that'll be happening quite quickly. Anybody else?
Just hang on.
Tony?
Again, Jen, not a question, but more of an observation. Just Etan's point earlier around how do you stop the tranche of people going into that £300 a day sort of standalone private sector role?
Yeah.
Probably this is linked to that, isn't it? Where you're creating retention in the sector by adding dimensions and professionalism to people's roles, specifically thinking around things like customer care with operatives. People will feel more attached to the sector they're working in and be less likely to just flip off and chase the money.
Yeah, well, and we're trying to introduce like various things. So with the trades apprentices, for example, the block release model, the fact that they're with us for 1 week of the month in Derby, and they're coming from different housing providers. So, for example, we've had several cohorts start in September. One was a cohort of property maintenance operative apprentices. So we've got 10 operatives from 4 different housing providers up and down the UK. In those housing providers, they don't have large DLOs, so they're 1 of 2 or 3 apprentices. So their peer group is very small. But with us, for 1 week of the month, they have a peer group of 9 other people. We think that will not only help with retention, because they're not just going to college with lots of joiners from the private, PMO people from the private sector, they're working with people who are doing the same job in the same sector, so they've got that automatic peer group set up. And you're right, it's how do we help retain those staff? One of the things that we've introduced, and I'll be coming to some of you to ask for your help with this today, we are engaging with people from the sector who started off as apprentices, whether that's trades or non-trades, and we're building a bank of people who can then come and speak to our students to talk about their career path. Because it's great if you become a tradesperson and you want to stay a tradesperson, that's absolutely fine. But what we want to do at Thrive is open up the housing sector to people and show them what a great career opportunity that they have. You can start off as a joiner and end up a head of property services. You could start off as a plumber and you could end up working in development, or you could work in customer service. There's that much variety to what we do. So what we want to try and do is make people aware of that from entry level, and in the hope that they see our sector and think, wow, this is amazing, like there's so much I can do here, and not want to run off and go and get that self-employed £300 a day.
Thanks, Jen. Anybody else then? No?
I've just got one thing, Jen. When you're saying, are there any gaps in that? I think there is a gap around operative supervision. Think of the reviews that we do all the time, pick up the same weakness.
Yeah.
There's a lot of role drift at that level.
Yeah.
And I think they sometimes just make up what they think's required of that role.
Yeah.
I think it's crying out for it, if I'm honest.
100%. And also the step change from being trades to being a trade supervisor. So another thing our trades tutors have implemented is each one of their areas, when they have a cohort in, they will have a trades shop supervisor. So one of their students will be the trade shop supervisor for that week. They've got a tick list of things that they have to do. They wear a different coloured high-vis, so it's to introduce everyone to that world of having a little bit more authority, and also the conversation change between working with your mates to actually being in charge of some people that are essentially your peers not long ago. So it's giving them that sort of taste of what that might look like, and hopefully we can then work with our employers to sort of earmark people to say they're showing real promise as a natural leader.
Hi, just thinking about what Etan said about career changes. Have you got any plans to run any apprenticeship equivalents that are 12 months, or to attract those career change colleagues that might join the industry?
Yes, so it's something that we are looking into. What we wanted to do was build a really good foundation with apprenticeships and entry-level people. Our mission is to help solve the skills shortage. So part of that is encouraging entry-level people into the sector, but we have got those shorter courses in our plans, and it's, you know, today we're talking about some of the ways we can upskill our existing staff, but that is a really good way to bring someone that's already in the sector but propel them into something else as well.
Any more for any more? No? Can we show our appreciation for Jen? Thank you very much. So we're going to break for lunch. Lunch is downstairs. Just follow the people that know where they're going. And we're back in here at 1:15. Brilliant, thank you.
Excuse me, Russell, are you sure lunch is downstairs? Has it been spotted over there?
Tell a lie. I think it's over. Is it? Is it behind that? Lunch is in here, sorry. What do I know?
The tiling around the bath and the bath panel, then that saves someone else. And if you could actually, on your own, replace the kitchen, then you're on the highest level. We didn't ask them to do electric, but all the kitchen units, plumbing associated with it at the time, you could do all that.
And then we did upgrade to that. We were just generally but then we would train them up to familiarisation, multitasking. Which then went into plumbing, electrical, and eventually I did one training with replacement for 70 50. Nothing so dependent on we do that because that's the transition from working with the lads because all of them have come up through the ranks.
initiative. Right. Yeah. Clearly a synergy there.